Zoom in on global affairs with insightful debates and exclusive interviews. This is World Insight.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, our special coverage on China's annual political season, the two sessions. The world's second largest economy is on track toward a strong start of its 15th five-year plan, eyeing homegrown advanced tech innovation, deepening reform, and expanding high-standard opening up. So how can the Chinese economy fully benefit from these measures? How can China tap into the potential of the three tools for growth: fiscal policy, monetary policy, and structural reforms? My in-depth interview with CPPCC member, Professor Bai Chong'en, the Dean of the School of Economics and Management with Tsinghua University. The school has nurtured generations of policymakers in China over the decades. You have been arguing from last year that both the fiscal and the monetary policy of China should support reform and, as a result, to promote the transformation of the economy. Tell me more about exactly that can be done.
Okay. When we talk about economic policies, normally people divide policies into three areas: monetary policy, fiscal policy, and structural reforms. And then the issue is how to connect them together. And in the current situation in China, I think it's very important to put them together. For example, we have one of the problems we face is that prices are weak, and we have negative price growth in the last few years. This is actually a big problem. When enterprises decide whether they want to make investment or not, or how much investment they make, future price prospects is an important factor to consider. For consumers, whether they want to consume or not, nominal income is very important. If you tell them that your income grew by 2%, but price dropped by 2%, then you tell them that your real purchasing power by 4%. People don't feel that. They look at their nominal income. So when price grows in a healthy way, consumers' nominal income grows as well. And also for durable goods, if they expect the price to drop, they don't want to purchase now, they want to wait. So price movement affects consumption as well. One of the very important sectors in China is real estate. And it used to be a very big part of the economy, but now it's not doing well. And the most important factor that affects that sector is the price movement. If consumers, if investors expect the price to drop, they're not going to buy. So price movement is so important. Any policy consideration will have to take this into account. So this is one thing. I think in the next 5 years, we need to do something about the prices. At the same time, we also have a lot of structural reforms that should be done. For example, our consumption as a share of GDP is still low. There are disputes about how low it is. There are different numbers, but overall, it's still low. And if you compare Chinese household consumption with that of a more advanced economy or more advanced economies, you find that services consumption is relatively weak. And a lot of the service consumptions are semi-public goods. For example, health. Consumers take money out of their own pocket, they purchase health services. But a lot of the expenses are covered by the health insurance programs. So it's partly market-driven, partly affected by policies. Education, obviously, is another thing. So a lot of important areas where Chinese household consumption falls short are these areas where are these areas which fall between the government and the market. They are very policy sensitive. So in order to boost consumption, boost spending in those areas, we need to reform the policy. Let me give you an example about health. We have at least 2 different health programs. One health insurance is employment-based. We are all covered by this. If you are working for an institution, for an organization, you are sort of covered under the health insurance system. The other is the so-called residence health insurance. People who are not formally employed, the government offers this residence health insurance program. So this employment-based program and this residence program are very different. They offer different benefits, and you also pay differently. And one of our problems with the health system is that the residence health insurance is much weaker than the employees' health insurance. And the employees' health insurance covers about less than 400 million people. The residence program covers more than 900 million people, about 1 billion. And this 1 billion people is not given very strong health coverage. So that's an important factor that affects the development of the health sector. Then the issue is, how do you deal with this? Right. So there are proposals to merge these 2 programs, which is really difficult because for employment-based program, fundraising is easy. You just deduct it from people's payroll. But for residence program, people need to take money out of their pocket. You cannot force, it's not mandatory. So different financing schemes make it very difficult to merge them. But I'm doing some research there. We can design a way so that eventually they merge.
It seems that you are suggesting that people should be more willing to spend if the prices are going higher. And you're also suggesting that there are certain policies that can be done to encourage people to take out more money.
This health insurance program needs to be reformed. We have a design so that eventually they can be merged, but it will take a transitional period of time for that to be realized. In the interim period, you don't have the fundraising. Just the fundraising part has to take time to build up. And so you need money to support the improvement of the health insurance program. And where does the money come from?
That's the key question.
Yeah, that's the key question. And the idea is that when prices are weak, there is a lot of capacity for the government to issue bonds, to borrow. When the prices are weak, when government borrows, there is no risk of creating high inflation. If the price movement is normal, suppose we have 2% inflation. If government borrows too much and spend the money, then it can overheat the economy and create inflation.
So you're arguing this is the best time to do it?
Yeah, this is the best time to do it. Prices are weak. There is a lot of capacity for the government to borrow without creating inflation. And when the government borrows, if the monetary authority doesn't cooperate, it can create a lot of problems. So it takes very good coordination between fiscal and monetary policy to make it easier for the government to borrow, to lower the cost of government borrowing, and use the money to pay for the transitional cost of the reform of the health insurance system.
You even argue, using an analogy, this is almost like a free lunch. Professor, how to make sure it can be a sustainable free lunch?
Yeah, that's very important. You have to have deep reform of the health insurance system so that in the long run, they are self-sustainable. Fundraising has to be enough to cover the expenses. So in the longer run, we should have this system in place which is fiscally sustainable. And the program I suggested only pays for the transitional cost. So if you rely on this fiscal and monetary support stimulus forever, that will be a huge problem. In the future, when prices become normal, it will create inflation, etc. So that's what I call investing for reforms. You have to have the reform. Otherwise, you spend the money and then you can create dependency. So suppose now you improve the benefits, but in the future you cannot afford to do it, but you have to do it because people become dependent on it.
How long is the so-called interim period?
Yeah,
and how is it related to the prospect of China's economic growth, meaning the money can be supporting the overall transition that you just argued about?
You have to do it, to design the whole process in a way that you always watch for the reactions. You tailor the pace of the reform according to the data, according to the reaction. So it's going to be difficult, but it's the right direction, I think. And it's doable. In other countries, people experimented with different things. We learned a lot from those experiments. But in a lot of those cases, they don't consider monetary policy, fiscal policy, and structural reforms comprehensively. So my proposal is to put them together, consider the whole package.
You even argued back in the late 1990s that there were similar practices done by the Chinese government. Of course, the economy size at that time cannot be compared to what it is today. And by the way, there was tremendous pain and challenge at that time when the policy was being implemented.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned the late 90s and early 2000s case. At that time, Chinese commercial banks were laden with a lot of non-performing loans. It was a high ratio, and people were very concerned about the soundness of the financial system. Then the Asian financial crisis just happened, so we were very apprehensive of the possible crisis in the Chinese financial sector. So at that time, if we don't do something about the non-performing loans of the commercial banks, the economy will be stuck, because when they are burdened with so much non-performing loan, they will not be very active to issue new loans. So you have to solve that problem. But to solve that problem, one solution is to pour money into the bank. Then the risk is when you solve the current non-performing loans, new non-performing loans will come.
And they're piled up.
Yeah, it will be piled up. So this is the so-called moral hazard problem. When you help people, they become reliant.
Beyond the headlines, this is World Insight.
Welcome back. I'm Tian Wei in front of the Great Hall of the People for our special coverage of China's annual political season, the two sessions. On some of the major directions of China's 15th five-year plan, economies all over the world are watching closely, said this panel I hosted earlier today. We are joined in the studio in Beijing, Zhang Gong, professor with University of International Business and Economics in Shanghai, Carlo D'Andrea, Vice President of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China and Chair of Shanghai Chapter. In Jakarta, Indonesia, Ibrahim Rahman, Head of Indonesia Financial Group Progress and lecturer at Graduate School of Sustainable Development, University of Indonesia. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. China's 15th five-year plan, certainly the center of attention at this moment when the world is experiencing dramatic changes and chaos.
Given China's weight in the global economic system, the fact that China has been consistently sticking to the theme of development, peaceful development, laser focused on developing the economy, on high quality growth, on innovation, all these things, it's not just good for China, but also offers tremendous opportunities for many countries around the world. Northeast Asia remains to be a very peaceful place. You look at where the investments are going these days. I think the investment in China is still very much secure and safe. We have a stable environment. We have a very business-friendly environment, actually.
Yeah.
We have excessive regulations. We have very moderate energy prices. We have a strong labor force. We have engineering talent. I think this situation is going to maintain to be the same for many years to come, given what's happening in the Middle East, given what's happening in Ukraine and many other parts of the world.
Abraham, from where you are, Southeast Asia, how are you reading the outlines of the 15th five-year plan? What could that mean for economic opportunities when it comes to cooperation?
Yeah, for countries in Southeast Asia, in the midst of the end of rule-based economy, where we see the absence role of WTO, the absence role of UN, this is very refreshing to see that China is very consistent to set positivism across the region and visioning economic progress that can be spilled over to all other countries in ASEAN. And for Indonesia, it's very clear China is our partner, contributing to no less than 5% of GDP. So if China keeps growing, it means that Indonesia's economy can also get the benefit from the China's economic long-term planning. I think it has been very frustrating during the last couple of periods to negotiate with the US with the tariff and stuff. And actually, some countries in Southeast Asia are, trying to figure out where to lean in this kind of dynamics. And we have been traditionally trying to divide our attention and dependencies for China and the United States, almost equally. But now it's very clear that we cannot rely with the uncertainties that has been created by the United States.
Right.
So when looking at the plan, we see, a lot of optimism with industrial engineering, with, advanced technology, that other countries in ASEAN can be integrated into China's supply chain. And that's really refreshing and, a bright light towards the dark tunnel now happening in the world.
Right. Ibrahim, now, how do business community and economic policymakers in your country, your region, articulating the changes that we are experiencing since last year, for example? First of all, it was worldwide tariff war set by one country against the rest of the economies, and that bar keep on changing all the time, with simply a statement coming from one administration that would change the whole thing. And then we are seeing now more geopolitical chaos, with two countries jointly attacking one and now becoming a regional warfare, and possibly the crossfire going to go even beyond that region.
I think for Indonesia and many countries in Southeast Asia, we have been spending a lot of sunk costs in trying to negotiate with Trump administration without any clear results. When we negotiate, we expect that the tariff will be getting down, but it's just going ups and down, tit and tat, without any clear final goals of the cooperations. And now with the growing Middle Eastern upbringing problem, then we can see that actually Southeast Asia is the common victim, because we are net importers of energy, LNG and oil. The whole oil in Hormuz Strait will be sending to Southeast Asia almost 86%. It means that we are net importers. And what's happening there, which you are not responsible for, will be impacting us in terms of inflations, in terms of fiscal deficits, that we have to try to find out the solution. So it's funny in the world that we are not contributing to the problem, but we have to try to solve the problem, creating by other countries. So that's the situation in Indonesia and I think many countries in Southeast Asia.
Carlo, go to you now about that uncertainty. Tariff is still hanging on the heads of many economies. And also now we see more geopolitical changes.
First of all, let me tell you that European companies are committed to China for the long term. And our members, they are strongly believe in trade. That said, we cannot hide ourselves that the relationship between EU and China at the moment are not the greatest one. Indeed, it's still two biggest, largest economies that they trade almost over 2 billion euros per day. What we want to see is to have a better cooperation among these two blocks. First of all, because in one side we are seeing that there is a growing trade imbalance between EU and China. And this is something that we hope in the 15 5-year plan will be addressed somehow. There are some positive signs that Premier Li Qiang already declared more than once that they will address this irrational competition. Another point that I want to mention regarding the export control, you nail it. This is one of the main issues at the moment that our members doing business in China are feeling. In 2025, create a big disruption, especially on some critical rare material, and under the umbrella of to have more localization. Indeed, China follow the 14 5-year plan, push on localization, on self-reliance, on the security. So we hope to see a better improvement, and especially the China and Chinese leaders will continue the dialogue.
All right. Go to some important questions regarding the 15th five-year plan. First of all, it has been talking about high-quality growth. And what does that word specifically mean to you and your sector?
Transitioning towards next 2045, we call it Indonesia's goal, require massive transformations in terms of manufacturing process. We have been working very closely with China until recently with, downstreaming and transfer of technology. I think looking at, how China plans next 15 years ahead, illuminates something very beneficial for Indonesia to be part in the supply chain. So it will be interesting to see how far we can go ahead with the corporations. Beforehand we can only sell the minerals, the raw materials, which is very fluctuating, so that we cannot really enjoy the magnitude of the product, but rather we're impacting that by commodity fluctuations. We have to go ahead with the ladder of corporations. And I think China has a lot of promise for us to go through in this very difficult situation, where any window else has been closed for more intense collaborations.
Carlo, about high quality growth, which is the characteristics of the 15th five-year plan, as already seen in the outline. One thing is really well reflected, that is in clean energy. Carlo, as you know, with the conflict now in the Middle East, we are likely to see the crude oil prices going up for quite some days and weeks to come. Europe has already been suffering from energy crisis. How committed do you think your part of the world will be to clean energy and make sure Europe can efficiently transform your economy into that? In that regard, what kind of role can China and Europe cooperation play?
Indeed, the green transition is one of the main tables where Europe and China can play a decisive role together. The commitment of the 2030, 2060 of China is very seen in a positive way by our members, that they have the technology, and many of them are already working in order to be carbon neutral. When we are having an interview with our members, we realize that the green transition and the green conversion is very crucial for them in order to have a competitive edge in the future. So I understand that this disruption happening in the Middle East may create some problem on the energy price. We already seen the oil grow by threefold in a couple of days. So the green transition and the accessibility to the green energy in the Chinese market is definitely very crucial for our members. Regarding the high quality growth, we do believe that this is an extension of the Made in China 2025, where China wants to highlight which one are the sector where she wants to lead. Because we hope that the European companies and our members can play a role in this growth of China, because we want to win together with China in the Chinese market.
And I understand from business leaders I've been talking to, for example, BMW chairman and some of the others, it is not the Chinese market that the European business leaders are looking at. It is also how to work with China for the international market. Carlo.
Indeed, this is a good point. This is a good point. China for global. You have seen one of the main challenges that our members by the Business Confidence Survey are facing is the Chinese economic slowdown. And for this, many of Chinese companies, they are going abroad. and they are trying to set up their new facilities around the world. One thing I want to point out, Europe is an open market for investors who come to the market, who bring their technology and who bring the add value. Indeed, what we have seen lately is a shift from Europe to see and to secure the sector of technology that they believe are crucial for the development of the country. So we do believe that there are opportunities in among both economy, but when China go global, need to think that they need to bring technology with them, they need to bring a local supply chain, for instance, in Europe, and they need to create a job and add value in the market where they are investing. If they do this, Europe is more than welcome for them.
Thank you so much for the three of you for taking your time and sharing with us your insights. And that is all the time we have for today. On March the 5th, I will be here at the Great Hall of the People to bring you the latest updates about China's annual political season and latest discussions about the 15th five-year plan. I'm Tian Wei from the Great Hall of the People. Bye for now and see you tomorrow.